One day, I overheard my future mother-in-law mocking me in front of her friends. She proudly bragged that she had landed a naive son-in-law and that her financial future was now secure. After hearing that, I decided I'd had enough of her arrogance. I made it clear she would no longer be living off me or using me for her own gain. I stood in the hallway holding my breath as laughter echoed from behind the door. Loud, smug, unmistakably female. I was just about to walk in, but the words I heard froze me in place. He really thinks I'm living here out of pity. Naive. Finally got myself a sucker for a son-in-law who'll pay for everything. Caitlin's set for life now. That was Linda, my fiance's mother, my future mother-in-law, the woman I had let into my home when she lost her husband and had nowhere else to go. I wasn't eavesdropping. I had just come back from the store with a bottle of wine, and that's when I heard her voice. Something in me clenched. I had poured my heart into this home, into our relationship, into her daughter, and now I was just a punchline in her little comedy routine. Caitlin and I had been together for 2 years. I'm 33. I didn't grow up with much. Middle child of 3, raised by working-class parents who scraped by paycheck to paycheck. I worked hard for everything: college, career, promotions. I had just gotten a major one, and we decided to throw a party. Invite friends and family to celebrate. Caitlin handled the planning. The house looked great. Guests were arriving, everyone was cheerful, music was playing, and I stepped out briefly to grab more wine, only to come back and hear myself being mocked. Linda had never really liked me. From the very first time I visited their home, her disdain was obvious. Caitlin is the only daughter of a once successful businessman. He passed away a year ago, and after his death, it turned out he had left behind a mountain of debt. Linda had to sell the house. By then, Caitlin and I were already living together. She offered her mother to move in with us. I didn't hesitate. The woman had just lost everything. Of course, I said yes. But from the start, she acted like she owned the place. Criticizing the house, not enough light, cheap windows, wrong kind of carpet, throwing out comments like, "Real men don't do dishes," or "Caitlin could have done better." I stayed quiet, for Caitlin's sake, because I loved her. She didn't know the half of it. I never told her. I kept hoping things would change. But now I'd heard everything. No more subtle digs, no more hints, just a straight-up mockery. "I live here for free. He thinks he's helping. In reality, he's just paying for my new life." I stood there with that bottle in my hand, heat rising in my chest. I'm not a saint, but I've never used anyone. And if someone thinks they can turn me into a joke in my own home, they're dead wrong. I walked into the room with a bottle of wine, trying to keep my face calm, but inside everything was boiling. The laughter stopped instantly. The conversation cut off mid-sentence, and Linda fell silent as if she sensed she'd been caught. I poured wine into the glasses, set the bottle down on the table, and said evenly, "I heard your conversation." I stood outside that door for 5 minutes and listened to her laugh at me, call me naive, talk about how conveniently she was living at my expense. I reminded her that I took her in when she had nothing, that I tried to be respectful, helpful, patient, that I swallowed her comments, her looks, her disdain, all for Caitlin. But mocking me behind my back, in front of her friends, that was the line. She turned pale, then tried to claim it wasn't like that. But I cut her off. I didn't need excuses. I needed respect. The room went silent. Caitlin appeared in the doorway, confused. I turned and calmly told her what I had heard. Her face shifted instantly, from confusion to shock, then to quiet disappointment. She looked at her mother and said nothing, just sat beside me. I told Linda she could no longer live in our house. She could reach out to one of those wealthy friends of hers who had just laughed along with her. Linda tried to object but realized I wasn't bluffing. I gave her a couple of days to pack. She looked around, hoping for support, but not one of her friends spoke up. They all looked away. For the first time in a long while, I felt in control. That evening, after the guests had left, Caitlin sat in silence and only said one thing: "You did the right thing." The next morning, Linda left. No goodbye, no apology. A day later, I got a message from her, full of blame, guilt-tripping, manipulation. I showed it to Caitlin. She quietly took my phone and blocked the number. The day after Linda left, the house felt strangely quiet, like the silence was holding its breath. Caitlin and I went about our routines, but something hung heavy in the air. I kept replaying the moment in my head. Not the confrontation itself, but everything that led to it. All the months I stayed silent, all the comments I ignored, all the space I gave to someone who never once offered gratitude. I thought I'd feel relief. Instead, I felt raw. My phone buzzed with messages, some from my family who fully supported me and said they were proud I stood my ground. But others came from Caitlin's relatives, who either tried to stay neutral or worse, hinted that I'd gone too far. One of her aunts messaged me saying I should have handled it privately and respected an older woman's pain. That hit a nerve. Pain doesn't excuse cruelty, and disrespect doesn't hide behind age. Caitlin wasn't saying much either, but not out of indifference, more like processing. I could tell she was torn. She loved me, but it was still her mother. That night, she came to me and quietly said Linda had been twisting the story to relatives, saying I screamed at her, humiliated her in front of everyone, kicked her out without warning. None of that was true, but I understood how fast gossip spreads when it's convenient. I didn't care what Linda told others, but I cared about the ripple it created in our lives. It wasn't just tension anymore. It was division. Our two families had been slowly drifting apart, and now there was a clear break. A split neither of us wanted, but neither of us could stop. I kept thinking about the wedding, whether it would turn into another battlefield. Would her side even come? Would mine be judged for supporting me? I didn't say it aloud, but the doubt was growing. Not about Caitlin. I loved her deeply, but about everything that came with her. I didn't marry just a person. I was marrying a world, and parts of that world clearly didn't want me in it. A week later, I sat on the edge of our bed staring at the floor, trying to find the right words. Caitlin was brushing her hair in front of the mirror, her eyes catching mine through the reflection. I finally said what had been gnawing at me since the party. Are we doing the right thing? She turned slowly and asked, about what? I didn't sugarcoat it. I told her I was starting to worry, not about us, but about the weight that came with everything around us. The pressure, the drama, the fact that even before the wedding, we were already walking through landmines. I said I was scared to build a life where I'd constantly be defending myself from her family. I didn't want to resent her for battles I didn't start. Caitlin didn't look shocked, just tired. Tired in that way people look when they've already asked themselves the same questions. She nodded slowly and came to sit beside me. She said she understood and that if we needed to push the wedding back, she would support that. But then she added something I didn't expect. I know I'm not my mother, but I want to prove that to you, not just with words. Let's sign a prenup. If that helps you feel more secure, I'm all in. I looked at her, unsure what to say. Not because I didn't want it, but because she offered it without hesitation. She wasn't defensive. She wasn't offended. She was, grounded. She just wanted us to have peace. That one gesture, simple as it was, lifted something off my chest. It wasn't about money, it was about trust. She saw that. That night we talked longer than we had in weeks. Not about Linda, not about drama, just about us, our plans, our life. For the first time since everything started, I felt like we were on the same team again. And I realized maybe we could do this. But we needed to set boundaries now, not later, before others tried to shape our marriage for us. 3 days later, the doorbell rang while Caitlin was out running errands. I wasn't expecting anyone, but when I opened the door and saw Linda standing there, suitcase by her side, my stomach dropped. She looked calm, too calm, but her eyes gave her away. Red, tired, desperate. I didn't say anything. I just stepped aside and let her in, not out of politeness, but because I needed to know what her angle was this time. She walked straight to the kitchen table, sat down and began without hesitation. You think you won, she said, but you ruined everything. You've turned Caitlin against me. You've taken my home, my family, my daughter. I didn't respond. I let her vent. She went on about how I manipulated the situation, how I should have kept my mouth shut, how men should endure and not explode. Then her voice changed, bitter. She said I was selfish for not offering her a place to stay permanently, that if I really loved Caitlin, I would have welcomed her mother no matter what. I could feel my jaw tightening. I told her plainly that love doesn't mean accepting disrespect, that I had my limits and she crossed them months ago. She laughed and called me dramatic, said I was overreacting to a few harmless comments and jokes. I reminded her of exactly what she said behind my back, the way she mocked me to her friends, the look on her face when she thought I wasn't around. She tried to change the subject, blamed grief, blamed stress, blamed everything but herself. But none of it landed anymore. I had heard enough. As her voice got louder, Caitlin came through the door with grocery bags in her arms. She paused in the hallway, took in the scene, then slowly put the bags down. What's going on? She asked, but I didn't answer. I didn't need to. Linda turned to her, now trying a new tactic. Soft, wounded, maternal, but Caitlin wasn't buying it. You said those things about the man I'm marrying? You embarrassed us? You never apologized? Her voice was calm, firm. Linda looked between us and realized, for the first time, that Caitlin was no longer on her side. Linda stood there frozen, as if she'd been slapped with reality for the first time. Her lips moved, but no words came out. Caitlin didn't yell. She didn't cry. She just told her mother that what happened at the party wasn't a misunderstanding. It was a breaking point. You crossed a line, she said, and you haven't even tried to make it right. Linda's face crumpled, but the apology never came, just more blame. She accused me again of manipulating Caitlin, of isolating her from the only family she had left. She insisted she had nowhere else to go, that it was cruel of us to turn our backs when she was still grieving her husband. I wanted to feel something, pity, regret, even guilt, but I didn't. I just felt tired. I told her clearly, without raising my voice, that she needed to leave, that she was not welcome to stay here anymore. And if you refuse, I added, I'll have no choice but to call the police. Linda's expression shifted. Shock, then rage, then disbelief. But she didn't argue. She gathered her bag, muttered something under her breath, and walked out without another word. Caitlin closed the door behind her and leaned against it like all the energy had left her body. We didn't speak for a long time. We didn't need to. Later that night, I told her I needed a break. From her family, from the constant pressure, from the fear of what's next. Not from her, but from everything else. She nodded, almost grateful someone had said it first. We agreed to limit contact with her side of the family, at least for now. I started going to therapy the next week. The first session felt strange, like unpacking boxes I didn't know I'd been carrying for years. But it helped. Helped me see how much I'd allowed myself to be dismissed, disrespected, minimized. How slowly, quietly, someone like Linda could poison a space, with words that sound small but cut deep. Therapy didn't fix everything, but it gave me language, and it gave me peace. For the first time in months, I could breathe. 4 months later, we got married. The ceremony was small, simple, and beautiful. We invited everyone, including Linda, more out of principle than hope. But she never responded to the invitation. She didn't show up. Caitlin was quiet about it all day. I could tell it hurt her, even if she didn't say it. No one wants to look out into a crowd and know their own mother chose not to be there. But instead of letting it ruin the moment, she focused on what we had. Friends who truly cared, my family who had supported us through everything, and most importantly, each other. The vows came easily. There was no performance, no fluff. Just two people who'd been through hell together, promising to do better with what came next. We laughed more than we cried. We danced until our feet hurt. We left the venue exhausted but light. The weight we'd carried for so long wasn't gone, but it wasn't on top of us anymore. We were under no illusion that marriage would magically solve everything. But we also knew that what we had was real, honest, fought for. In the days that followed, we started settling into this new chapter. Mornings were slow, quiet, warm. We made grocery lists together, argued over dishwasher etiquette, fell asleep on the couch watching shows we pretended to like for the other person. It was peaceful. No drama, no tension hiding in the next room. Just us. For the first time since this all began, I wasn't waiting for something to go wrong. I wasn't bracing for a comment, a side eye, a complaint about the curtains. I realized that this feeling of calm was what I'd been chasing all along. Not perfection, just peace. And if that meant cutting ties, holding boundaries, or letting people walk out of our lives, so be it. We were finally building something that felt like ours. A few weeks after the wedding, Caitlin brought it up gently, whether I'd ever consider talking to her mom again. Not to bring her back into our lives, she clarified, but just to clear the air. I didn't answer right away. Part of me wanted to shut the door forever, but another part knew how much it meant to Caitlin to at least try. So I told her I'd think about it. Therapy helped me sort through the mess. What was mine to carry, what wasn't, what I needed to let go of. Eventually, I agreed to one thing, a dinner. One evening, Linda came over. She didn't bring luggage. She didn't act like she owned the place. She brought a pie. It was awkward at first, small talk, long silences, too many glances toward Caitlin like she was our translator. But slowly, something shifted. Linda eventually spoke first. And to my surprise, she apologized. Genuinely. Not a deflection, not a half excuse. She admitted she had been cruel, proud, afraid. That after losing her husband, she clung to the only thing she still felt in control of, Caitlin. And that I became the easy target. She said she didn't realize how much damage she caused until Caitlin stopped answering her calls. I didn't forgive her on the spot. I didn't say much at all. But I listened. And in that moment, I saw something I hadn't seen before. Not a monster, not a manipulator, just a scared, flawed woman who had done real harm, but might actually be trying to make it right. We set boundaries, clear ones. No living together, no guilt trips, no more pretending nothing happened. We agreed to take it slow, birthdays, holidays, maybe the occasional dinner. We weren't going back to how things were. We were trying something different, healthier, honest. As she left that night, Linda hugged Caitlin tightly. She didn't try to hug me, and I was okay with that. Rebuilding something broken doesn't always look like reconciliation. Sometimes it just means both sides agree to stop making it worse.